Welcome, boys and girls. My name is Donna Rowe, and I'm going to read two stories for you for the Two-Story Boarding House. The first story I'm going to read is Humphrey the Lost Whale, which is a true story by two wonderful authors, Wendy Tokuda and Richard Hall. Our story begins on a sunny day, far out at sea. A pod of humpback whales was traveling south together for the winter. Humpback whales are magnificent creatures that sing beautiful songs to each other underwater. In the whole world, there are very few of them, so each one is quite special. And they're very intelligent. Every winter, they travel south, and every summer, they head north. And they always know the right way to go. But even whales can make mistakes. One whale named Humphrey was a very big whale. He turned away from his friends and wandered under the Golden Gate Bridge to San Francisco Bay. Everyone was surprised to see Humphrey in the bay. People don't get to see humpback whales very often because they usually stay in very deep water. It was a special treat to see one so close to the city of San Francisco. Humphrey was a spectacular sight, as long as a city bus and as big as 7 elephants put together. Can you imagine as big as 7 whole elephants put together? He would come up to breathe, appearing as if by magic, and people would stop whatever they were doing to watch him. Then Humphrey did something that no whale had ever done before. Instead of swimming back out to sea, he went the wrong way up the Sacramento River. The big river became smaller and smaller, and as Humphrey traveled upstream, he got stuck. He was looking for the ocean, but it was clear that Humphrey was very lost. Have you ever gotten lost before? I have. And I was really scared. I can only imagine how Humphrey felt. Hundreds of people came to see Humphrey in the river. They would stare out at the water, waiting for him to come up for air. Then with a big whoosh, his giant back would appear. And someone would shout, "There he is!" And he was an amazing sight. But something was wrong. Whales are supposed to live in the salt water of the ocean, and the river, well, that's fresh water, and a whale would die if it stayed in the fresh water too long. So Humphrey was really in trouble. Everyone knew that Humphrey had to be back toward the ocean, but no one knew how to do that. After all, something like this had never happened before. The farther Humphrey went, the more worried everyone became, and they wondered whether he was getting anything to eat, whether he was getting sick, or if he was going to beach himself in the river, because the river isn't as deep as the ocean. One day, Humphrey squeezed under a tiny bridge. It was so small that no one could understand how he did it. Now he was really in trouble, and he was trapped in an even smaller part of the river. The river beyond the bridge was very shallow and extremely narrow. It was so small that Humphrey could hardly turn around. There he was, a whale stuck in a tiny stream, right in the middle of a farm field. Can you imagine a whale in a farm field? It was hard to believe. Something had to be done to get him out of there and fast. Humphrey looked very sick. The scientists knew he would die if he didn't get him back to the ocean. Time was running out for Humphrey. Poor Humphrey. The people trying to save Humphrey would have to move very fast. The scientists, Coast Guard officers, and many others got together to work out a plan to save him. They decided to bang long pipes together underwater and try to scare him back to the ocean. At the same time, they could play a recording that would broadcast underwater the sounds of whales eating. and maybe Humphrey would be so hungry and lonely that he would swim toward the sound. I know if I was lost and I heard somebody talking that maybe I knew, I would want to find them too. It worked! Humphrey turned around and started swimming back down the river. Everyone was very relieved, but the danger wasn't over yet for Humphrey. When Humphrey arrived at the little bridge, he stopped. He was afraid to go under it. He couldn't find a space big enough. People kept banging the pipes, and poor Humphrey, he seemed more flustered and scared. What was he going to do? As the pipes kept clanging, Humphrey became angry. He rolled from side to side, thrashed his great big tail, scared the people, and they stopped banging the pipes because they didn't want to upset him anymore. But Humphrey's friends, no way were they going to give up. They knew they had to get him past the little bridge. And if they didn't, he would surely die in the river. The people trying to save him decided to make the space bigger. They brought in a huge crane and worked through the night to clear away some of the old pilings. Pilings are wooden beams that are under the water. Would Humphrey notice the difference? I don't know. The next day, the people began banging the pipes together again. Clang, clang, the boats moved closer to Humphrey. They were trying to scare him towards the bridge. This was his last chance, and everyone watched nervously. Humphrey bravely approached the bridge, but as he tried to swim under it, his head lodged between the pilings. He frantically bobbed his head up and down and thrashed his tail to free himself. It was a terrible moment. Everybody was very frightened. The people trying to save Humphrey thought it might be the end, and Humphrey was stuck. Suddenly, luckily, Humphrey lifted one fin out of the water, almost touching the big bridge. As he twisted his body, he broke free from the pilings and swam through to the other side. Oh, I would have been a nervous wreck if I'd have been there. There was a shout from the banks of the river, and then another and another until everyone was cheering. "Hooray for Humphrey!" they shouted. He made it. Humphrey the lost whale was finally on his way home. A whole flotilla of boats and the clanging of pipes behind him helped Humphrey find his way down the river. Finally, Humphrey arrived at the San Francisco Bay. Humphrey spent one whole day happily swimming around the bay. He did tricks for the people gathered along the shore to see him one last time. They oohed when he slapped his tail. They awed when he leapt out of the water and belly flopped back into the water. Humphrey seemed to be saying goodbye and thank you to all of his friends who have saved his life. The people who had helped rescue Humphrey also felt very grateful. Humphrey had taught them a lot about humpback whales. He had also become a very good friend. Many times during his ordeal, Humphrey would have simply flicked his tail and could have overturned the boats carrying the people trying to save him, but he didn't. He seemed to understand that they were his friends. Finally, in the late afternoon fog, Humphrey swam under the Golden Gate Bridge and back out to sea. Humphrey the whale had made it, and he was finally home. That is a very true story, and you know what? They've seen Humphrey many times along the same coast. He comes to visit. The second story I'm going to read is The Rainbow Fish. Rainbow Fish is a lovely story about a shiny fish, and it's by Marcus Pfister. A long way out in the deep blue sea, there lived a fish. Not just an ordinary fish, but the most beautiful fish in the entire ocean. His scales were every shade of blue and green, and purple, and sparkling silver scales among them. Very beautiful fish. The other fish were amazed at his beauty. They called him Rainbow Fish. "Come on, Rainbow Fish," they would call. "Come and play with us." But the Rainbow Fish would just glide past, proud and silent. letting his scales shimmer. One day, a little blue fish followed after him. "Rainbow fish," he called, "wait for me. Please give me one of your shiny scales. They're so wonderful, and you have so many." "You want me to give you one of my special scales? Who do you think you are?" cried the rainbow fish. "Get away from me." Shocked, the little blue fish swam away. He was so upset he told all of his friends what had happened. From then on, no one would have anything to do with rainbow fish. They turned away, and he swam by. What good were the dazzling, shimmering scales with no one to admire them? Now he was the loneliest fish in the ocean. One day he poured out his troubles to the starfish. "I really am beautiful. Why doesn't anyone like me?" "I can't answer that for you," said the starfish, "but if you go beyond the coral reef to a deep cave, you will find the wise octopus. Maybe she can help you." The rainbow fish found the cave. It was very dark inside, and he couldn't see anything. Then suddenly, two eyes caught him in their glare, and the octopus emerged from the darkness. Scared. "I've been waiting for you," said the octopus with a deep voice. "The waves have told me your story, and this is my advice. Give a glittering scale to each and every other fish. You will no longer be the most beautiful fish in the ocean, but you will discover how to be happy." "I can't," the rainbow fish started to say, but the octopus had already disappeared into a cloud of ink. "Give away my scales, my beautiful shining scales? Never! How could I ever be happy without them?" Suddenly he felt the light touch of a fin. The little blue fish was back. "Rainbow fish, please don't be angry. I just want one little scale." The rainbow fish wavered. Only one very small shimmery scale, he thought. Well, maybe I wouldn't miss just one. Carefully, the rainbow fish pulled out the smallest scale and gave it to the little fish. Thank you very much," the little blue fish bubbled playfully as he tucked the shiny scale in among his blue ones. A rather peculiar feeling came over the rainbow fish. For a long time he watched the little blue fish swim back and forth with his new scale glittering in the water. The little blue fish whizzed through the ocean with his scale flashing, so it didn't take long before the rainbow fish was surrounded by other fish. Everyone wanted a glittering scale. The rainbow fish shared his scales left and right, and the more he gave away, the more delighted he became. When the water around him filled with glimmering scales, he at last felt at home among the other fish. Finally, the rainbow fish had only one shiny scale left. His most prized possessions had been given away, yet he was very, very happy. "Come on, rainbow fish," they called. "Come and play with us." "Here I come," said the rainbow fish, and happy as a splash, he swam off to join his friends. And that is a story of the rainbow fish, a wonderful story about sharing, which is important for all of us to do. Thank you very much for joining us at this two-story boarding house. Join us next time, boys and girls. Bye-bye.